I wanted to talk about distraction today, but real quick, just a quick update on the shit I was talking about last week. Talking about doing like a mobile podcast with a video component and all that stuff. So I've been practicing with the gear to try to get the best results possible. And it looks like we're going to be able to do something pretty cool in terms of getting at least a quality product out there. So it's just a matter of getting some good ideas. Tested the microphone, this little tiny fucking microphone. It actually sounds really good. Surprising. It's not going to sound quite the same as this, but it sounds really good. I did a test driving in my cargo van, and it's loud as fuck. And I was just driving to work and did a quick session just to see how it sounds. And it actually sounds pretty good. Been practicing with the GoPro, and that technology's come a long way. So I think I'm pretty close to getting that going. I don't know if the next episode will have that, or maybe the one after that, but pretty soon I'll be getting into that sort of like mobile shit, recording podcasts while I'm out doing other things. So I'm kind of excited about it because it's going to force me to get out and do shit, because like I get caught in my sort of own shit and just don't want to like go out and do stuff. And when I'm busy with work, I tend to not paint, and I haven't painted for a while. So I'm hoping this will be a good excuse for me to get out there and paint, and then at least kind of like talk through this shit while I'm doing something else. And then the YouTube channel will have some stuff. And then I want to get the audio quality at least good enough to where if you're just listening to it on audio, you're not really missing out on anything, and you don't have to deal with all this crazy shit, like bunch of sounds in the background. Like you'll hear some shit, but I don't know. Anyway, so it's on the way. And, for you audio only people, I'll be curious to hear some feedback on how that changes your experience. If it's not as good, or if you like it. And then I also got set up to do video guests. I signed up for this thing called Riverside. It's supposed to be similar to Zoom, but much higher quality. So that'll be another thing. So I want to start getting some guests and talk about stuff, you know, similar to what we talk about now. I'm not really looking to get into this whole, like, you know, interviewing people and their backstories and all that. There's plenty of that stuff out there, and that stuff's cool. But that was never really the intention. So if you've heard the old episodes of Cub and I talking back and forth, that's kind of what I'm looking to do, like find people to have conversations similar to that. So if you're one of those people, or you know somebody that you could recommend that I reach out to, go ahead and hit me up, and you know, we'll talk about it. Let me know if it's you. Let me know what you want to talk about, or, you know, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, probably not going to do too many of those, but you know, we're going to try it out. So hit me up. You can email me bus@machinestudio.com. Hit me up on Instagram, at bus166. You can send me a message on Twitter at bus166msk. Somebody brought to my attention that I had mentioned on the podcast that I never get messages on Twitter, and I thought it's because nobody followed me there, but I had blocked messages so that nobody could message me. So I don't know if any of you tried to. If you did, I apologize. It should be good to go now. Definitely on Instagram or the email. Anyway, let's get into this. So I believe I've talked about this before. I can't remember if we did a whole episode. I scrolled back through the catalog to see if this was like kind of a repeat, but I think the bullet points I have listed out are things that I probably have talked about a little bit, but a lot of stuff that I haven't. So, you know, I'm growing more and more concerned with just sort of the direction we're going in terms of being distracted, and the way that devices and platforms and all these kind of things, that they're I don't even think it's like a conspiracy theory to say that the people running the platforms, they're studying all kinds of different neuroscience and all this kind of shit in order to make these things addicting, you know, and I'll get into some of that as we progress through this, but it's concerning, you know, and the more I read and the more I learn about how the brain works and dopamine and all that stuff, and kind of the purpose of dopamine and how it can be manipulated to where it could create addiction and stuff like that. And then just witnessing my own behavior, when I'm reaching for the phone, and I feel like I'm always saying to Jesse when I'm sitting there and like, we don't have a lot of time together. We both work a lot. So when we're sitting on the couch together and I'll realize that I've been just like scrolling through shit on Instagram or wherever for like 10 minutes, and I'll be like, I got to stop doing this. And, I got to be present in the moment. And it's up to us, to regulate that stuff. But at the same time, you're also up against, people that are creating things that are designed to be addicting. I mean, that's kind of like how food addiction works and, drug addiction and all that kind of stuff, because those things have been created in a way that triggers things in your brain that makes you want to do that, whatever that is. If you're eating, I'm off the rails already. This is nothing. I don't know. Maybe I'll go over this in my bullet points later, but like when you're eating fast food, for example, I mean, that stuff is engineered to be addicting. There's studies done on things called the bliss point in food, where they mix like just the right amount of salt and sugar and fat and all these kind of things that they know that your brain wants. I'm going to move on, but like that stuff is left over. It's sort of like when you were out in the wild, this is my understanding. I don't know if I have all this right, but when we were out in the wild, resources like sugar and stuff like that, that's energy that's really easy to, for your body to, sugar is really easy for your body to convert to energy. So my understanding is the reason that it's so addicting is because it was such a scarce resource and something you don't generally come across when you're out foraging. So when you're eating that stuff, your brain's telling you, hey, stock up on this because you don't know when the next time you're going to get it. And the same thing with like fats and I think salt and stuff. These are things that your body needs for survival, but you don't need as much as what we get now. And so that stuff's engineered. So that's like food. And then the same thing with like social platforms and stuff. There's all these different things that are programmed in and they test to make, how is this stuff being received and all this sort of shit. So let me just start going through my bullet points before I just ramble on through everything. But so first, let's talk about modern life distractions and sort of some of the things that we're in now. So like I'm 50, so like I feel like I have a good opportunity to have lived half of my life without an excess of technology and then another half with it. So I'm able to look at both sides pretty objectively and remember what it's like to not have a phone and all this kind of stuff. I remember the first time my dad got a beeper, it was like in the early 80s or something. And it wasn't even the kind of beeper, I don't even know. Some of you might not even know what the fuck that is, but like a pager, So I remember when the pagers came out that had the phone number of the person that called you. And that was a big deal because I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Now you know who's paging you. So like my dad got a beeper that you call it in, but all it does is beep. And that was just a way for my mom to say, hey, call the house. So it's like that's just like, now it just seems so stupid. It's like, what the fuck? You have a beeper for literally one person. Like it didn't have different beeps for different people, nothing. It was just, you call it in. And when that beeped, my dad knew to call home. And I was like, whoa, that is crazy. Cause we had these corded phones. Like I remember even cordless phones. That was a big deal. So, anyway, so I remember what it's like, you didn't know where anybody was. You'd come home, nobody's home. You're like, I don't know where anybody is. You have no way to reach them. You can't call them. You can't text them. You can't page them. You can't do any of that shit. So it's a big contrast between, the way I grew up to the way I'm living now. And I think a lot of these things that I'm going to talk about, these all existed, but they're sort of amplified now that we have these devices that sort of connect us and all this stuff. So there's one thing is instant gratification. I think that's something that humans crave, you know. And so even taking technology out of it, let's say you're overweight and you want to lose weight, you don't really want to hear like, hey man, it's going to take 6 months. It's going to take a year, depending on where you're at. It's going to take a long time. It's not a fast process. And that's another thing that gets taken advantage of. It's sort of like, you know, these diet fads and all this kind of shit. They know that you want instant gratification. So what's going to be more compelling if you're 100 pounds overweight? A commercial that says something like, hey, you know, I'll help you eat right and live a healthy lifestyle and change your lifestyle so that you'll lose that 100 pounds in fucking 16 months, or I don't know how long it takes. It's a long time. Let's say 24 months. 24 months, you'll be in the best shape of your life. You'll have created better habits and all this kind of shit. Or some other shit that's like, hey, drink this fucking lemonade and you'll lose 30 pounds in a week. I know that's exaggerating. I don't know if the numbers are right, but you've all seen that shit. So that's like playing on that instant gratification thing that I think we've always had. But at the same time, now the instant gratification, we're getting more and more accustomed to it with things like social media, because, you know, like you post something on Instagram and you could instantly start getting feedback. You could start seeing likes. You could start seeing comments. If you don't see that stuff, then that could trigger you to do something else to stay on the platform. So it's like instant gratification is sort of playing into all of this kind of stuff. Then there's another thing, and this goes along the lines of what I believe that is happening in terms of, you know, these social media platforms and different apps and stuff, how they're studying things that get you addicted. There's something called variable rewards, and it's like a casino at a slot machine. Social media has an element of unpredictability, and you see that it's interesting. I don't know how many of you paid a lot of attention to this, but in 2019, I think it was, and I don't remember when TikTok came out, but I know TikTok was another app before. I think it was like Musical.ly or something like that. But in 2019 is when people started kind of looking at it. Like Gary Vee started talking about it. I think it was 2019, somewhere around there. That's when I got on it. And this variable reward thing was really big on that app, because to put into context, like the first thing I ever posted, well, I don't know if it was the first thing, but like I had posted things and they kind of like didn't get any views at all and it deleted them. But the first post on our Instagram or TikTok timeline, I think has like 4.9 million views. And I still don't understand quite why so many people were looking at it or commenting or all this kind of thing. But then the next post maybe had, I don't have it in front of me, but let's say it had like 100,000 views, and next one maybe had like 60,000. And then we had more that did in the millions, you know, and some that had hundreds of thousands. It was all over the place. Like if I post on Instagram, in general, I have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be in terms of views. They're not even, but it's not as variable as it was on TikTok. Think about on TikTok, you could post a video and get 5 million views, and then the next video get hardly any views. So it's like, I believe that was kind of by design, because it was sort of like I was, when I started getting into that and I started noticing that, you know, we were getting a lot of reach, because there wasn't a whole lot of graph on TikTok when I got on there. So I think our stuff was a little bit novel in terms of the kind of content that was out there. So anybody that was at all interested in graffiti, or maybe not even interested, but just hadn't seen that kind of thing on that platform, you know, they were engaging with the content. So my stuff was getting pushed out, and we ended up growing a pretty significant following. Now they've changed it quite a bit, so it's nothing like that anymore. But there is still the possibility of going viral, and it's hard to. I would even go out on a limb and say that it's impossible to predict what's going to go viral, or, you know, there's all this stuff in there, and I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but there's all this stuff like the first 3 seconds, the hook, you gotta stop them from scrolling. There's all these like tactics that you can do. But I didn't use any of those tactics. They may be in there, like, and I just didn't really like intentionally do that, but that stuff might be in there. There may be hooks in there that stop people from scrolling. And it might be that novel thing when they see somebody spray painting, they're like, what the fuck is this? This is used to seeing like girls dancing and people lip syncing and shit. And then all of a sudden there's this dude spray painting shit. Maybe that was the hook that stopped them. But so you can like try to go viral, but it doesn't mean you're going to. And you see a lot of shit on there where people are like, I'll show you how to go viral every post. And then you click on their profile and it's like, well, why aren't you going viral every post if you know the formula? So anyway, variable rewards, that's how social media kind of works. You don't really know what's going to happen. So you put something out there, you don't know if people are going to like it, if they're not going to like it, if a bunch of people. So that whole idea that you put something out there and then that could just all of a sudden blow up and all these people are going to see it, you hit the jackpot, like a slot machine. So then there's another thing that FOMO, I'm sure you've all heard of it, fear of missing out. And I'm sure that has existed. I mean, I remember not wanting to miss out on shit when I was a kid before any of this stuff. So this is stuff that that we've probably always had, but it's also amplified with, having this device in our pocket. It's kind of like you don't want to miss anything. So you have all these alerts on your phone, and that's like fucking detrimental to your focus. I mean, I've turned off all notifications on my phone except for text messages because I want to know if, Jesse or somebody at work is trying to get in touch with me. But outside of that, I don't have any notifications on in these push notifications and dings and all this stuff. I remember hanging out with somebody, we were painting, and his phone was going off every few seconds. And it was like he had all the notifications on for his social media. So like different social media platforms, I don't know if it's still like that, but they would have different sounds. So anytime somebody posted on a Facebook group, it would make a sound. And I think it was every time like he got a message, it would make a sound. And then I think Instagram had a different sound. So I was like, dude, do you have notifications on for like everything on your phone? So like anytime anybody posts, you're getting notified? And he's like, yeah. And it was like, it was normal. This was a while back too. It was probably probably even like 2014 or 2015 or something. And so, I had notifications on, but I never had as much as this dude, because I just couldn't even imagine. But after a while, I was like, I have too many notifications on. Like I had notifications for sales every time a sale came through on my in my shop. So if somebody went into the shop and bought something, or if somebody ordered something online, I would get a message from that, and that was fucking with me. Because if I wasn't getting a lot of sales, I'd be depressed and I'd be nervous and worried that everything's going to shit. And then if I was getting a lot of sales, I was getting distracted because I'd be in the middle of work and I'd hear a ding, and it's like a cash register ding. So it's like you want to see, oh, how much is that? It's a lose-lose, because like if it wasn't dinging, I was like, why is nobody buying anything? And if it was dinging a lot, I was not very productive, because you're constantly stopping, And that's just, even without the notifications, these things sort of suck you in. And it's kind of like, that's where the addiction is a big problem, because we do get addicted to the device. I find myself reaching for it, and it was automatic. I didn't make the decision to grab my phone and check to see what's going on wherever. It just happened. And I think that's a sign that there's some sort of addiction, or at least like a habit that you've ingrained in yourself to constantly want to check that thing. And so other platforms have, like, I read this, I don't use Snapchat, but I read this, that Snapchat has features like streaks to keep you coming back. Like you want to maintain the streak. And actually I did notice this on Facebook. Like Facebook's always sending me a notification that's saying something like, oh, you've increased your exposure for 128 days in a row. Keep it up. And so it's like, oh, well, I don't want to, 128 days, man, I want to keep that streak going. So I better post something, better engage or do whatever, because if you post a comment, that's the same, similar. You're potentially bringing eyes back to your shit. So it's just kind of trying to keep you on that platform. And then I already talked about push notifications. This is on my list here. Oh, and then when they changed over to algorithmic feeds, everybody was all pissed off about that it wasn't chronological anymore. But that was a move to show you shit that's going to keep you on there. Because if it's chronological, you're just going to see shit from people that you follow when they posted it. So say you're following some dude's graph page or something, and he hasn't posted for like 2 weeks, and then you're not going to see shit for 2 weeks. But if once they changed over to algorithmic feeds, it's a whole different ball game. It's like, and test this. If you've never, everybody knows about everybody. I'm not going to say everybody, but most of us know that there's an algorithm. That's a big buzzword that everybody uses now because of this. And if you're not really aware of how it works, just go to your Explore feed on Instagram and look at what's on there. And you'll see that all the stuff that's on there is shit that you generally look at. And then you can change it right in front of you I do this all the time. I fuck up from time to time and I look at the Explore feed on the Machine Studio page and I'll be looking at like shit that isn't related to that business at all. So like Jesse and I are always sending funny shit back and forth or dog stuff. And so I'll look and I'll be like, oh shit, I'm doing this on the wrong, I shouldn't be doing this at all. It's fun that, Jesse and I send stupid shit, but anyway. But I'll accidentally be on the Machine page and then I'll change what the algorithm thinks I want to see there. And I'll realize I fucked up. And so then I'll be like, I got to get it back to like, I like that Explore feed to be mainly graffiti shit. And so you can change it right in front of you. You can just go in and click on everything that's like what you want to see and like it and maybe hover on it for a second and then go back to your Explore and kind of go through and like it. And then when you refresh it, you'll see there's more of those kind of posts. And the more you do that, you can fill your whole Explore feed really quickly. So that's how the algorithm, a really simplistic way of kind of demonstrating what it's doing. But how does that play into what we're talking about? It's exactly what we're talking about. It's the software, AI, or whatever the fuck that's running in the background is learning, every time you stay on a video for a long period of time, or I'm pretty sure that even if you stay on a photo, if you engage with the photo, if you like it, you save it, you fucking comment or whatever it is that you do, it stores that data and it's like, okay, this person, you liked this video of fucking baby bears crossing the street or something. And so the more of that kind of content you like, the more it's going to start showing you. And then that's what you see. So, there's a good and a bad to that, because let's say you're on some dark spiral and you're like looking at all this like angry fucking divisive like political shit or whatever, then that's going to be your algorithm. That's going to be what it's going to show you. It's going to show you whatever it is that's going to keep you on there. So that feeds into the addiction, that feeds into the fear of missing out and showing you what you want to see. And then the more you scroll, it's like that. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a slot machine and it's moving in the direction of a slot machine. Like, I think all of that stuff is deliberate. I've read somewhere that I can't remember, but the slot machine rotates in a vertical way because there's something that triggers in your brain. And that's the same way that you scroll through Instagram. So you can kind of see, or TikTok or whatever, you can kind of see the similarities between a slot machine and your Explore feed. So when you're scrolling through Reels, I think it's a very similar thing. You're scrolling and you're kind of like anticipating seeing something that you want to see. And so it's just interesting stuff. So these are things that, like, obviously we have control. We don't have to do this shit, but there's people that have a lot of money and resources and an expertise. They hire experts and all these kind of people that are like, okay, well, this is how the brain reacts to this kind of stimuli. So if we create things like this, like there was something even, I think it was like the like button or the notification button on Facebook was blue at one point, and people weren't checking their notifications because it would highlight in blue. But then when they changed it to red, like your brain reacts in a different way to red. So it's like, oh shit, that's red. I'm going to see what's going on over there. I don't know how that works, but that's something I read. So, I mean, those little tiny tweaks that get you to move around the platform the way that they want you to. And so I talked a lot about technology, but I think that's like kind of one of the things that's probably the most, well, I don't think, I mean, I'm fairly certain that it's one of the most distracting things of our lifetime. And so it's hard for you to overcome that stuff because we want to participate. And that's where everybody is now, not everybody, but that's, you connect with people. There's all this shit, there's all this shit that's good about it, but then it's a manipulative at the same time. So it's up to us to kind of figure out how to healthily use these tools because they're very powerful and there's all kinds of stuff you can do with them. I don't know about extreme one way or the other. Like I wouldn't necessarily say I'm just never going to use these platforms again because like my business and I connect with the culture that way and all this kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of benefits. So it's about just trying to find ways to do it in a more healthy way and kind of reduce distraction a little bit. So I'll kind of shift gears a tiny bit here as we kind of get towards the end of this conversation. So self-imposed distractions, that's something that I think I've always kind of had a little bit of a problem with. It's like, I was just reading about this, and I probably don't remember exactly how he put it, but there's something about distraction. It's very interesting. A lot of times if you have a task that is not enjoyable and it doesn't have a lot of feedback, there's not a lot of rewards in it. Like I think the book was talking about doing your taxes. It's just sort of like, that's just a tedious thing that you have to just push your way through, as you're filling out forms and digging up information and plugging it in and all that stuff. There's not really a lot of like milestones and rewards and all this kind of shit. It's just like a tedious process start to finish. Unless you like doing that. I'm sure there's somebody out there that does, but I mean, for most of us, tasks like that are they kind of just suck the whole time. Like imagine going to the DMV to renew your registration. Like there's not a whole lot of milestones in there where you're like, cool, I made it to this point. Now I got this little reward, and your brain's kind of like, cool, keep going. It's just like, this is just going to suck the whole time. So it's like tasks like that. Those are the tasks that I always put off. Like the registration on both of my vehicles is like way expired because I just don't want to fucking do that shit. Like I don't want to deal with it. And they make it easy. It's stupid. It's dumb. But it's a tedious kind of task that I just don't want to do. So I put all this other shit in front of it. And so that's like a self-imposed distraction. So like I'll have my power list, and on that list is one of those kind of tasks, or even maybe not to that extreme, but there's a task on there that I know is going to be it's just going to be tough as you go through it. I mean, obviously a lot of times like there's a reward at the end, like, oh man, I'm really glad I got that out of the way. And those tasks probably do have the most relief, like when you finish them. Like for me, working out is one of those tasks. Like I don't enjoy it the whole time or any of the time. I just don't enjoy it at all. But I know that when I do it, especially the times where I'm losing that battle in my mind, like I go to battle, like a lot of times I have to write specific workouts that I want myself to do. I have to write that in my power list. So if I don't do that workout, I don't get my win for the day. And so even with it on there, I'll be losing that battle, like my brain will be like, I just don't want to do this. I don't want to fucking do this. And it's going to take this long and I got to do that. And I ate food a little while ago, so I'm probably not going to I'm going to be all sluggish, like whatever, I'm losing, right? And so my brain's even saying like, just take a loss for the day. It's not a big deal. Then I'll remember, I'll be like, man, I'm on like a 14-day winning streak. I don't want to lose. don't want to lose today and break that streak. Like, see how long I can keep this winning streak going. And so then once I win the battle and I force myself to start the workout, then I'll finish it. And then those times are definitely the most rewarding. So I can't really say those tedious tasks don't have a payoff. It's just at the very end a lot of times. So anyway, the purpose of even talking about that was we impose distractions to, avoid doing the things that we don't want to do. So, and that could even be in the form of things that are somewhat productive, but it's kind of like if you have a task that you don't want to do, but then you have 3 or 4 other tasks that are easier and maybe are more enjoyable, and you might put those ahead and just put this like tough task all the way into the end. That's why a lot of like these kind of like, what would you even call them? These people that teach you how to be more productive and that kind of stuff. A lot of times they say, whenever your energy levels are the highest, and most of us, it's like at the beginning of the day before you get the shit beat out of you, or whatever you just get tired throughout the day. So like they say, get it done first, like get your hardest shit done first. And so I kind of find myself doing the opposite because I do that. I have these self-imposed distractions where I take the hardest task and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get this done. I'm going to get this done first. I'll do this. This will be easy. Let me get this out of the way. And it's like, I'm just kicking the can down the road to a point in my day when maybe I don't have as much energy and I could have done a better job on that task had I just knocked it out in the morning. That's a little bit on self-imposed distractions and procrastination. Then another thing I wanted to touch on also is the media. And so that's another form of distraction that I think is pretty obvious if you really look at it. Like it's very manipulative. And I was talking to somebody, I was talking to a guy that works for me, and he's, I think he's 27. So I was like, are you old enough to remember when the news was, they just reported shit? They just said, this is what's happening, and that's it. They don't give you their opinion on it and all this stuff. When you watch news now, it feels like they're trying to convince you to believe whatever it is that they're trying to get you to believe. And they're trying to distract you from other shit. So it's like a lot of times you hear, these stories come out and you're like, this is kind of weird. Like everybody's all on board with this story. And then somebody will be like, oh, you know what happened the day before that story came out is such and such. I mean, I don't have a lot of examples because I don't really want to go down that path because there's some big ones, but I don't know. I'm kind of to the point where like that kind of stuff, I'm unaffected by it to a certain degree, but at the same time, I do notice things. And, so I feel like a lot of this stuff that's going on in the media and the reason that they have opinions and they're trying to manipulate you into thinking, and that's not really what the news was intended for. Like the news was for you to get the information. It's not so much for you to get the information from someone else's point of view in a way that's trying to get you to believe what they're believing. And so if you look at the tactics that they use in order to distract you, so the human mind, from the way I understand it, is we're programmed to be able to identify negative or dangerous type of things. It was a survival thing that you had to be able to identify things because you could get eaten or attacked or something by an animal or whatever. We don't really have that anymore for the most part because we're living in civilizations, most of us. Anybody that's listening to this probably is. But at the same time, we still have that shit in our brain. And I believe that the people that are running these media agencies, and it doesn't matter what side, whether it's left, right, or whatever, it doesn't matter. It seems like they both use the same kind of tactics, and you can see it in like the thumbnails and the headlines and things like that. It's like they play on this fear and negativity and stuff like that because it just draws you in and it makes you want to see what's going on, especially fear. Fear is a really great motivator, and you can obviously see that all around you if you're paying attention to the media. So I believe there's a lot of distraction going on there and a lot of manipulation and a lot of dividing. Like it seems like if you're really kind of like on the devices and kind of paying attention to different things. And again, this kind of goes back to what your algorithm is saying. So every now and then, like my algorithm will get programmed into some kind of weird divisive shit. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing a lot of those kind of videos, and then it'll start making me feel like we're very divided, like culturally, racially, or whether we believe one thing or the other. And I'm like, man, there's all this division. There's all this like this hatred from different sides and all this kind of stuff. But then I realize I'm like, I spend a fair amount of time out there in the world and I'm interacting with people and I never see any of this shit. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist, but I'm saying it's amplified by the media and it's amplified by people sharing it. It's like it feels like there's a manipulation going on, because if you're seeing something that's negative and it pisses you off, that'll put you in an emotional state. And we don't really make the best decisions when we're emotional. And I believe that the negative stuff a lot of times makes you want to share it more. I don't know if that's right or not, but so that stuff it tends to spread. So then I wonder if like a lot of the problems that are being shown to us may be amplified, but I don't know. It's speculation. I can't be all these different places and look at all this stuff, but I believe there's a lot of weird shit happening. And if you look at any of the media outlets, I think you'll probably see a lot of that same stuff. So we just got to be careful with that stuff and look at it objectively. If you want to get some information, I don't know where you go to get actual objective information. Like this shit happened and this is what these people did. This is what this happened. And now we're going to talk about this other thing. I don't know where that exists these days. Maybe you could tell me where that exists. I don't know. But so I'm saying just be careful with that stuff and just try to look at it objectively and try not to get sucked into whatever it is they're trying to lead you down. If you're getting led down a path, then I would say absolutely question it. Why am I being led down this path? And why am I being led to believe whatever it is that I'm being led to believe? I think it's something that's definitely going on. So I want to touch on real quick the impact of distraction. So if you're living in a perpetual state of distraction, that's obviously going to have negative effects on pretty much everything in your life. Your mental health is going to suffer because I don't think your brain is necessarily designed to flip from all this different shit. Like sometimes when I'm on my phone and I'm looking at all these different things and I'm going back and forth between all this stuff, and I'm looking at this and then I'm switching over to this app and I'm looking at that, and then I'm going back to this app to see what's going over there. And I'll catch myself and I'll think like, I think this is damaging my brain by doing this, because it doesn't seem likely at all that our brain is supposed to be shifting back and forth between all of that stuff. So in a sense, I think it's going to affect your mental health. And I've been trying to pay attention to it, and I can't really tell if I've noticed anything. But a lot of times when I find myself like spending too much time on the phone and then I put it away, I'll sort of take a look and be like, what's my mood like? What is my mental state right now? Like, is it worse off now because, I have been sort of bouncing around and just like overstimulating my mind, looking at all these different things. Have I sort of like damaged my mental state, my current mental state? Like, has it gone down? And I also noticed that when you're hyper focused on something, so a couple of examples that I can think of right now is like when Jesse and I went to Sedona and we sort of unplugged, and we'd spend all this time just in nature, like just sitting there, like looking at the sky for like a couple hours at a time, or doing a hike next to a river. And the only time we took our phones out were to take pictures of the river and shit like that. Like we weren't like scrolling through, and I did notice a big improvement in my mental state during and some time after that. As soon as we get back to the city and all the movement and all this shit going on, you sort of settle back into the state that you were in before. But I definitely did notice an improvement by doing that. And I remember I kept telling Jesse, I'm like, man, we got to do shit like this more often. Like we should try to find a way to do this like once a month or even more. Just get out into nature and just get away from all the bells and dings and all this shit, and just kind of unplug. I'm sure you hear that. Like we all hear that shit. Like we're supposed to do that, but I don't think a lot of us do. And I sort of envy people that do that. So I got to do that more. But so that's about mental health. But then it also affects your relationship. So like what I was saying when I'm on the couch, just like hanging out with Jesse, and I'm looking at my phone. Like that's not a good way to spend my time with the most important person in my life. Like looking at my phone. Why the fuck would I look at my phone when I'm with her? Like that's fucking lucky to be hanging out with her. Like why the fuck would I be on my phone? It's so stupid. So when we go out to lunch or breakfast or something, I generally don't look at my phone. Like if she gets up and goes to get a water or something, that compulsion will be like, all right, well, I can just check a couple things while she's doing it. I shouldn't do that either. But as far as when we're sitting there, I do my best to just sit there and just be present with whatever it is we're doing, usually eating or drinking coffee or something like that. And so, I've seen this before when the phones really started taking off, like long time ago. And I think I brought this up before some episodes back. But I remember I was in a restaurant waiting for a pickup order, and I was just standing there, and I saw a dad with his kid, and they were at a table, and the kid had like a toy car, and he was just kind of like running it back and forth on the table and just kind of keeping himself occupied. And the whole time I was there, I think I was there for like 15, 20 minutes. The whole time I was there, the dad never looked up from his phone, and it just really made me sad. It was like, and I know I'm kind of being a little judgmental because I don't know their story. Maybe they do stuff all the time, and this was just an exception when he was doing something. But my perception of it was like, you're missing out on this moment with your kid, and that kid is not going to be that age forever. Like it's a short amount of time that you have with that kid at that age, and you're on your phone. And like I said, I don't mean to judge this person, but that's just the way I saw it. And that was kind of like what triggered it in my mind. And I see this all the time. Like I see people all over the place, and it's like a whole family, and the whole family is sitting at a table together, and they all have their phones out. And it's just kind of like we're damaging. I feel like we're damaging, maybe not damaging our relationships, but we're not feeding them. We're not improving them by doing this kind of things, so being distracted can definitely have negative effects on it. So the other thing, obviously, it's going to affect your productivity, going back to like notifications and all this kind of stuff. And even if you turn all the notifications off, but you have some kind of addiction to be compelled to grab that device, and this is a problem that I have right now that I'm trying to get past. I'll be like knee deep in some work that I need to be doing, and then I'll find myself checking my email, and I'm like, why the fuck am I checking my email right now? It's just because it's a compulsion. What if somebody needs something from me? And it's like, well, then they can wait 45 minutes, like finish the task. If there's an emergency, somebody will call me. And if it's a real emergency, don't call me, fucking call 911. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think we put a lot of emphasis on like, what if somebody needs something? And it's like, most likely I don't get a whole lot of calls, emergency calls, like almost never. So that compulsion to sort of step away and pick up a device or switch over to my email or check a website or do something, it's affecting your productivity. The more time you spend on task, the more chance you get into the flow state and kind of get into the groove of the work that you're doing. And if you spend a long period of time doing that work, without distraction, obviously you're going to get a lot more done. And so it's also going to affect your personal growth in that sense. So if you're constantly distracted and you're constantly switching back and forth between different things, how much time can you really stay on task? And that's something that I've really noticed with me is like, I really have to force myself to stay on tasks. And I find myself, I'm working in really short bursts. And I think I've programmed myself to be switching back and forth between different things. And when I think back to before social media, like maybe when Facebook or even Friendster, what was it? Friendster, I think was the first one. And then MySpace or whatever. Like back in those days, social media was there, but it wasn't on our devices. It wasn't nearly as powerful and all this kind of stuff. Most people didn't even use the shit. And so it wasn't a distraction. And so obviously you still had things like procrastination and shit like that. But I remember being able to spend hours at a time focused on a task. And I've created all these habits that kind of pushed me away from that. So I want to get back into it to where I can work in these longer periods of time. And like I've been recording for 50 minutes. So this is long for me, you know? And I think that's probably why a lot of the episodes are really short, because I just want to get it done. Like it's not that I don't care. I care deeply about this project, but at the same time, like I'm kind of programmed to like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it done, get that out of the way. And then I'm going to go on and I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to move and do all this shit. And I think it's having a negative effect on my, just the way I operate, you know? Like I like doing a lot of things and getting a lot of things done, but like maybe there's some stuff that you need to really need to settle into and focus your mind on that and not on other things. So a couple of strategies, I'll get into a couple of strategies that I'm using to try to do it. And one of them, I talk about it all the time, is the power list. You know, if you write those 5 tasks that you got to get done and you really want to get that win, you know, the more you do it. Let me see, what day am I on? So I'm on day 391. So I've done quite a bit of, I've been on this for a minute. So like, I find that to be very helpful, and it's definitely an easy way to get myself back on track with, you know, if I'm finding myself having trouble being productive that day, you know, the more you do it, the more you learn to tailor those tasks to occupy the amount of time that you want to occupy. So for example, somebody that works for me, she just started doing the power list. And one of the things she brought up was like, she'll put on these tasks that like, it's way too much work to complete the whole task, you know? So it's like, you'll learn these sort of lessons. Like maybe you'll put tasks on that maybe aren't quite critical tasks. Like, you know, going to the grocery store is not really a power list item, but also like writing a whole chapter of a novel might also not be practical. I don't know how, I've never wrote a novel, so I don't know. Whatever length of time, like a big tasks that you couldn't possibly rebuild the engine on my car. Like you probably wouldn't do that in a day and then also get 4 other tasks done. Like, so you'd break it down into different pieces. Like I'm going to complete this part of this task, and it's stuff that you can check off. Like you either did it or you didn't. So you got those 5 critical tasks. This is Andy Frisella's thing. So if you search Andy Frisella Power List, there's tons of information. So I find that really helpful. I use it almost every day, unless it's a day that I've kind of gotten to the point where I can actually force myself to take a whole day off, which I still don't take a whole day off, but there's some days where I don't do a whole lot. And it's on purpose. You know, you got to take a little break every now and then. So that's one of the things. The other thing I'm trying to do is setting more boundaries with technology. And I started reading this book called Digital Minimalism. It's by the guy that wrote Deep Work, and I really love the book Deep Work. And I use a lot of strategies that he talks about in there. So I'm looking at what he's talking about in there, and I need to get through that book. But he talks about the different extremes and different strategies that people use. Like he doesn't use social media at all. So that's like a complete extreme. I don't really want to go all the way to that point, but I do want to use social media less for entertainment and more for business, maintain my business on there and my brand and all this kind of shit. But outside of that, I want to set some boundaries on how I use that stuff. So I don't really have any ideas on how to do that, but I think being aware, you know, whether it's planned screen time, and I'm a little scattered with reading right now because I feel like I have like 3 or 4 different things going at the same time. And so another one that I'm reading, they talk about, you know, setting specific times when you can do certain things. So for example, you know, if you find yourself, they did a test to see how many times people check their email a day. And it's like, I think the average of people they talked to was like 40 something times a day or something like that. And so he was talking about setting boundaries where it's like you can set 3 times in a day where you check and respond to emails. So once, say, for example, once at 10 a.m. and then I'll check once at 2 p.m. after lunch and then once at 7 p.m. before I kind of shut down for the day. So that'll cut out a whole lot of times when you're kind of jumping back and forth between different technologies. And so you could set those same boundaries for your phone notifications. That's something I've been meaning to do lately is set specific times a day where I respond to DMs on the Machine Studio account, because there's so many DMs that come in and I find myself checking them a lot throughout the day because I don't want them to build up. But at the same time, I'm taking myself away from tasks. So it'd be better if I just like allocate, even if it took me like 40 minutes to get through all of the DMs and do all the stuff that I need to do there. I think it would be better to do that rather than just being pulled away from tasks, looking at shit. And a lot of times it's not just checking DMs. Like that creates a whole nother list of tasks. Somebody will ask a question. I'll have to answer the question. Somebody will tag us in a post. I'll repost that. You know, all these kind of things are even starts like this crazy back and forth conversation, you know, so that kind of thing happens. And the more I check those kind of things, the more kind of disjointed I am throughout the day. You know, it's like I'm spending less and less time in that state of deep work because I'm constantly going and looking at that stuff. So a good strategy, which I need to do, is to implement just specific times, even if it's 3 or 4 times a day. At specific times, I'm going to check the DMs and get back to people. So stuff like that can be very helpful. There's also something that I really need to do is like create a conducive environment for focus. You know, like my environment is usually pretty chaotic. There's just shit all over the place. That's just sort of how I always been, you know, but I don't think it's very productive. But then again, I don't know. I mean, there's pictures of Steve Jobs at his desk and there's fucking books and shit all over the place. So I'm not sure. But there are things that I need to do here that would create an environment that's a more productive environment. For example, something I've read in multiple books on habit is making it easy for yourself to do the thing that whatever it is that you need to do. So for example, like today I had to do some work on my laptop. So I came into my office at the house and I went to the desk to do some work, and there was so much stuff on the desk, there was nowhere to put the laptop. So I had to, before I could get to the things that I needed to get to, I had to move all this shit around and, you know, make space to be able to do the work. That's just one example of the kind of things you're sort of putting a little bit of a speed bump between you and your task. So maybe there's ways that I could create my environment and create some rules of where things go and how things are handled so that the work that I need to do is easy. And something that Cub said in one of the early episodes, it's kind of like, if you want to commit to making your style better, maybe you should make sure your supplies are accessible, or even put the supplies out like, hey, I'm going to do this drawing. I'm going to use these colors. I'm going to put all that stuff on the table. So when I get up in the morning, everything's right there and I can just get right down to business. If you get up in the morning and you had the intention of doing a drawing and you got your markers in your fucking closet in the basement, and then you don't even know where your black book is, and you don't know where this is, and you got to go around and do all that thing, gather all that shit up, it's pretty likely you're going to say, fuck it, I'm just not going to do that. So I think that's kind of the idea of creating an environment that's, you know, created for the intention of focus. Before I get out of here, I just want to remind you that we have that Discord channel. And if you've been listening this whole time, you're probably the kind of people we want in there, because this was a lot of shit. But yeah, so if you want to join that, just hit me up, email me, hit me up on Instagram. And so in closing, I would just say, check out some of consider some of the action steps that I just went over, and then take some time to maybe identify some of the holes in your game and see maybe, you know, some stuff that you can fix. I always have to remind myself that it doesn't have to be a big thing. And a lot of times these big, huge fixes, like if you're completely unproductive and you say, okay, I'm going to commit to doing deep work for 4 hours a day. you're sort of setting yourself up for failure. So follow some of these tactics, like these kind of like habit forming tactics, like making it easy for yourself to do it, and then set the task to be as small as necessary in order for you to get it done. And then you can add more as you go. The idea is just start kind of chipping away at it. So if you're looking at your phone for 4 hours a day, instead of saying, I'm going to knock that down to 30 minutes a day, take an hour off or take a half hour off. Not used to talking this long, so my throat's getting scratchy. I got to get out of here. So anyway, that's all I got. Hit me up. Jump on our Discord. Let's do this. All right. Have a good one. All right.
Appreciate each and every one of you guys who are supporting the cause and continue to spread the love. And yeah, stay up.